Recently, I bought a running, driving Honda Jazz for only $600. In fact, that's slightly less than the asking price. And I managed to get that by being a good buyer and not being pushy. The seller was so sick of people bombarding her with messages that she just sold it to me for $600 plus rego. It does need a bit of work though, so I think we should delve in and get it all good. $600 for a car like this is pretty decent, but it also doesn't look very good due to the paint. The interior isn't as bad though, a good place to start from, and the 1.5 litre engine seems quite healthy, which is also quite promising. It's done just over 300,000 kilometers, so not exactly a low mileage car. It's also got its fair share of battle scars, which I'll clean up later in the video. Under hard acceleration, it does seem to surge a little bit. This could be due to the engine or more likely the CVT transmission, so let's see if we can fix that. Since it had been sitting for a few weeks, I chucked in some premium unleaded to help clean out the fuel system. It's going to also need a new set of wiper blades, since these are quite crusty. And I'll start by giving the car a clean off due to just how dirty it is. Fairly soon I'll have to budget for some new tyres, as these are pushing 10 years old and don't have much tread left. Not every surface is bad. The paint fade and clear coat damage is mostly on the roof and bonnet, and eventually all of this clear coat should peel off, which might actually make it look better. And spraying it with some water actually helped remove part of it. A good sponging is definitely in order. This car doesn't look to have seen one for quite a while, and depending on where you live, this car may also be known as the Honda Fit. I personally think these earlier models look better than the newer ones, once cleaned out at least. And the further I delve in, the more I realise this needs a fair amount of effort put into the detailing. Luckily, this random wiper fluid cap I bought off of Temu many months ago actually fits this car. Focusing on the engine bay, it appears as the car has sat under a tree for a considerable amount of time. Perhaps a pair of gloves would have been good to wear in this case. And one thing I won't have to worry about is the timing belt, since this doesn't have one. And as long as it's had regular oil changes, the timing chain should last for many more years. Yes, I'll also be getting a new air filter, since this one is well used. There's still a lot to improve, but at least the exterior is a little bit cleaner. And I don't really care that the paint is faded, honestly. It could do with some new hubcaps though, and Cheapest Chips was closing down and had 50% off all the remaining stock. This meant that the set of 4 hubcaps was only $12.50, a real bargain. Yes, they are very light and cheap feeling, but any hubcaps are better than no hubcaps. And since they were so cheap, I bought another set, just in case. The old hubcaps don't appear to be original either. I would have loved to have them for the sake of originality. Next problem, the keys don't seem to lock or unlock the doors. The seller mentioned that this could simply be due to the batteries going flat, and inside is a small CR1616 3-volt battery, which can easily be bought online or in my case, locally, since I didn't want to wait for postage. And with a new battery in, I gave the casing a good clean off. It now unlocks fine, however it doesn't seem to lock from the remote still. And the only keyhole on this car appears to be damaged. The little protective spring-loaded flap seems to have fallen inside, and was removable with a bit of patience. Could this be the only issue stopping the key from being used? Well, it turns out that it was. Now I can lock and unlock the car using my key. And if you've got a bit of water getting into the rear of your Honda Jazz, it's apparently common for it to get in through these seams. I had noticed some signs of water intrusion into my car. More on that later in the video. And with the bodywork cleaned off, I applied some silicone, which I'm hoping will seal the gaps. And if you do something like this, make sure the silicone is waterproof and also bonds to metal well. Other items I definitely recommend checking if you buy an old car is the cabin air filter. The one in here is super easy to get to. Once the glove compartment is removed, all you've got to do is pull out this little plastic tray. Now for the moment of truth. When was it last changed? Not for a very, very long time. Somehow the AC still worked rather well. Yeah, this car definitely needs a good vacuum. But if your house needs a good vacuum and you want to do it in an easy and convenient way, the DJI Romo robot vacuum might be just right for you. Let's give this feature-rich, awesome-looking device a go. Immediately, I'm very fond of the transparent design. It's sleek and elegant, and that design aesthetic isn't limited to the vacuum itself. The base station shares the same design language, with convenient cleaning cartridges for both cleaning solution and floor deodorizing. This is designed for up to 200 days of maintenance-free operation. And to get started, the DJI Romo will map out your house with a remarkable level of accuracy. Millimeter-level obstacle avoidance is achieved with the high-performance binocular fisheye vision vision and LiDAR sensors. Once complete, you can fine-tune the map, set virtual walls, and place no-go zones with ease. Using the DJI Home app, there's a really deep level of customization. You can set this RoboVac up to suit your needs quite specifically. With your house mapped out, the Romo can get to work at up to 25,000 PA. Strong suction, excellent for removing hair, fine particles, and larger debris. This level of suction is also great for removing ground-in dirt and hair from carpets. Floors can't always be obstacle-free, thanks to a certain someone. And with the fine level of obstacle avoidance, small objects are seen and won't be disturbed during that cleaning. And when they're detected, you will even be shown them on a map if you enable the on-site photo setting. DJI have taken their years of experience with obstacle avoidance and drone navigation and put that technology into their new RoboVacs, easily making its way through tightly spaced chair legs. A truly complete, high level of precision vacuuming, with tight, hard-to-reach places cleaned using the robotic arm. And that same great edge and corner reach is achieved by the equally impressive mopping functionality of the DJI Romo. The automatic detergent dispenser makes removing heavy kitchen grease a real breeze. I left mustard, olive oil, and tomato relish sit on my floor for several hours. After a pass with cleaning solution and then water, it did a great job removing this debris. DJI really makes this easy and convenient, with automatic dust collection, as well as the mop pads being cleaned and dried in the base station. To find out more about the DJI Romo, click the links below and in the description. And thanks to DJI for sponsoring today's video. Another thing this car does rather well is hold oil. There doesn't appear to be any leaking onto the ground. It's now engine maintenance time, starting with the spark plugs. This engine, the 1.5 litre Vtech model, requires laser iridium ones. It's also worth noting that the smaller 1.3 litre model uses 8 spark plugs, 4 of them hidden under this cover. But thankfully we only have to deal with 4 spark plugs, but they are in a slightly awkward spot. Service records indicate that the ignition coils have been changed before, but not for well over 100,000 kilometers. And these spark plugs could also be of a similar age given their stubbornness to coming out. The first one is clearly quite worn, but not horrible. It also turns out to be the exact same model I'm replacing them with. At first, I thought these might be a challenge to remove due to the limited space, but the real challenge was getting the plugs out without damaging the threads. They were in super tight, and the last coil and plug were definitely the tightest in terms of space, so I had to be careful not to pull on any of the nearby wiring. And there we have it. All 4 plugs removed, all of them in similar condition, which I will take as a good sign. According to the maintenance records, these spark plugs could be about 130,000 kilometers old. And that also does explain why they were quite difficult to remove. Does it run with the new plugs installed? It sure does. And with the engine warmed up for a few minutes, it's time to do an oil change. Having it up on ramps makes this far easier. And to help with oil flow, I loosened off the filler cap. The sump plug was on fairly tight, but with a bit of forceful tapping, it did come loose. The oil within also didn't look too bad, but I also don't know exactly when it was last changed. After a few minutes, it had drained most of the oil. The Repco branded filter thankfully came off without the need for a filter wrench. I was sure to do this carefully as to not spill the oil everywhere, being sure that the old filter came off with its rubber gasket. I then lubricated the new one before threading it onto the engine, and I think it's fairly obvious why you can't pre-fill these with oil. And in goes the new oil. I prefer pouring it in a measuring jug. I feel as if this is a very accurate way to measure how much is going in. And I'll double check the level once it's back on flat ground. This pair of inexpensive ramps has made working on my car so much easier. The engine is running really smooth. Hopefully, it'll have a lot of life left in it. The oil level is right on the full marker, although I must admit it's a bit hard to see given just how clean that oil is. The new air filter had also arrived, so I was sure to install that before driving the car any further. Well, that was a successful spark plug and oil change. This engine is super smooth, so that's definitely a good point to work from. One thing we might have to do is change the transmission CVT fluid, as it doesn't look that great, and under hard acceleration there is a bit of shuddering, but that can apparently be alleviated by changing the fluid and using this stuff called Zato, was it CT120? I believe it is. It's an additive, which I know a lot of people are against additives, but a lot of Honda Jazz enthusiasts swear by this stuff, and it usually fixes the shuddering with the CVT transmission almost instantaneously. So I'm willing to give that a shot if just doing the fluid change isn't enough. But honestly, right now, mate, this car is quite zippy, but it is weird driving a CVT transmission, because it just kind of just goes up to speed. You don't really feel
the change in gears.
Now this thing desperately needs new tyres. They are at the tread wear indicator and some of them are labelled as 2016, being 10 years old, which is not good. And I got a new set of cheap tyres fitted and balanced for only 356 Australian dollars. I brought it in, told it would take 45 minutes, and 2 hours later, I had some new tyres fitted. So that's the engine oil, oil filter, air filter, and spark plugs done. But under hard acceleration, it does surge a little bit. So we're going to have to move on to the transmission. If you're doing a fluid change on one of these Honda CVTs, you absolutely have to use the genuine fluid. A lot of the other generic fluids you can find at most auto parts stores recommend not using them for this particular type of Honda CVT. And 4 litres cost me just over 100 Australian dollars and should be adequate for doing a fluid change. So let's give it a try. After checking the level with the engine shut off between 60 and 90 seconds before, after at least 15 minutes of driving, it seemed fine. So it's back onto the ramps once again. This can be a little tricky as you don't want to overshoot, and I'd recommend left foot braking while doing this. It was now that I realized one of the front ABS braking wires had broken off its clip and was rubbing against the drive shaft. I did work out where it was supposed to go, and I'll add some zip ties to keep it in the correct position. The bolt holding in the transmission fluid likely hadn't been touched for well over 100,000 kilometers, if the service records are to be believed. And holy moly was that bolt on there tightly. It definitely wasn't coming off by hand. So an impact driver will be required, but to get enough room to do that, the under tray has to come off. I'd highly recommend buying a new set of clips for this, as the old ones are likely going to be pretty chewed up. I started off at 200 Newton meters, which wasn't enough. At 280 Newton meters, looking back at the footage, it did move a little bit, and at 400 the bolt finally loosened off. Time to let the old stuff drain out. The fluid didn't look all that nice. A bit of metallic paste on the magnet suggested there had been some wear internally. Oh yeah, better spread that on your toast for breakfast. And with the trans sufficiently drained, I made sure to put the plug back in securely. Not as tightly as before though, obviously. And that is some very used fluid, and hopefully changing it will get our transmission working smoothly again. And since the level before was spot on, I figured I'd accurately measure what came out, and I simply put in the exact same amount of fluid. I took out exactly 3.3 litres, and the manual says you'll get 3.2, so this was pretty much spot on. Another consideration when it comes to filling these CVTs is reaching the dipstick hole, which is how you put new fluid in. A cheap funnel should get the job done. Just make sure that the fluid is indeed making its way into the transmission. After replacing exactly 3.3 litres, which is most of the fluid that's actually in one of these CVTs, it now accelerates totally fine. And in a few thousand kilometers, I think I'll do this again, because it could only improve the fluid in the transmission. Under the spare wheel, it wasn't looking very nice though. Clearly some water had been sitting in there for a while. This is another time I should have been wearing gloves. At least my tetanus shots are up to date. I hope. Honestly, once all the loose rust flakes were removed, it wasn't horrible, and I could see where the water had mainly been originating from. So let's dig in further by removing some of the bodywork. Slightly bent, and some gaps have formed as a result. There may be more water getting in, so I'll take out some interior trim pieces as well. There were quite a number of clips to dislodge, and a fair amount of patience was required. Well, there's water getting in through this gap as well, and I've heard that water can get in through the rubber seal around the tail lights, and to fully remove them, the entire bumper has to come off. I guess I'll also take out the other interior trim piece, as more water could be getting in from there as well. The rear bumper is held on with a few different bolts and clips, most of which are still intact thankfully, and not overly corroded. Clearly this hasn't been removed in quite a while, but it does reveal that some damage is present underneath. This looks a bit dented inwards, I must say. Not exactly ideal, but I can now remove the taillight assemblies, which for a cheap 22-year-old economy car look very snazzy. The left side proved to be a little bit more difficult to dislodge, but it did at least come with some spider webs. I'll clean off the rubber seals, which are designed to keep dust and I assume water out. Wiping down the rear reveals a few gaps which should be sealed up, and this hole I'm fairly certain would usually be plugged. But since I'm lacking the exact one, some tape will do for now, and wherever I could see any gaps into the boot, I simply sealed them up. I may have not done the neatest job, but I was sure to use plenty of silicone, and with a bit of sandpaper, I began removing some of the rust, cleaning off the surface with some methylated spirits. Then I sprayed on a heap of rust converter which should hopefully help stabilize further deterioration. And back on the bumper can go. After cleaning up the boot well and using a fair amount of silicone, it no longer takes on water. And after letting the car dry out, I began focusing more on interior detailing. Here I would find a tiny matchbox car. That's right, a car within a car. And what else can I find in here? Paper clips, a burger wrapper, and surprisingly, a lighter? This didn't seem to be a smoker's car though. In fact, the interior was in reasonable shape for a well-used vehicle with this mileage, with a bit of the expected finger grease on the steering wheel and shifter. What wasn't as expected was the CD that was left inside, that being James Blunt's 2004 album, Back to Bedlam. I'm pretty sure that's the one with the song that goes, "You're beautiful, it's true." And speaking of beauty, can we get these yellowed headlights looking better? Using some polishing compound and a cheap rotary sponge attachment seems to improve the surface quite a bit. And to make the result last longer, you should probably use some form of clear coat to seal it in. But I'm going to see just how long it stays like this without doing anything further, as a bit of a test. Another area I'll clean up is this small dent. Once polished, I clean the surface with some wax and grease remover, applying some rust converter and waiting for it to sufficiently dry. Now comes the fun part. Painting the surface. This car has the paint code B506M, Ice Metallic Blue, and the touch-up paint I had mixed up was a very close match. I'd imagine the paint on this car may have faded a little bit in the last 22 years. What hasn't faded is the practicality, with ample room in the back once the seats are folded down, and I can see why these are still so popular. Even an example as worn and old as this still feels great to drive. The electric power steering makes turning effortless, with a new set of tyres making for a far more comfortable driving experience. Honda's early CVT transmissions have mostly stood the test of time if well maintained, and this particular car, with its high mileage, was able to get 5.63 litres per 100, easily the most efficient vehicle I've ever owned. One that'll hopefully get me to where I need to go for many more years to come. While this started as a very cheap car, I actually spent another $600 on all of the consumables and parts. So I'm in about $1,200, but I now have what hopefully will be a very reliable and economical car. Thank you very much for watching. I had a great time dealing with this thing. As long as the mechanical side isn't too involved, I'm going to have a good time dealing with cars like this. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and hopefully I will continue to be driving this 2004 Honda Jazz. Have a good one.